We have official confirmed news about a live-action She-Ra series that's in development at Amazon MGM Studios, with Heidi Schreck attached as writer and executive producer. Although there have been no major updates since October 2024, we're confident that we'll soon be hearing about the next stage of development. Keeping that in mind, we thought it would be nice to explore the entire life of She-Ra, the various iterations of her backstory, and how she was even portrayed as a bad guy in some versions. Either way, she remains He-Man's lost twin who once fought for the Horde. We're going to keep this intro short, but before we jump into things, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos in the future. With that said, let's explore the entire life of She-Ra. The Story of She-Ra Mattel MiniComic was her first appearance ever. Before she appeared on screens in the Secret of the Sword movie in 1985, She-Ra actually made her debut a year earlier in a Mattel MiniComic called The Story of She-Ra. Packaged with the original She-Ra action figure in 1984, this was the first time fans got any version of her origin. And the basics of her origin were pretty much what we knew. So, the Sorceress of Grayskull has a vision of a baby Adora being snatched from Eternia's royal palace by Hordak and taken to Etheria. Later, Prince Adam is sent to track down his missing twin. The comic and the movie line up for most major plot points, but a few things are obviously different. For instance, Catra, for one, is way more dangerous in the mini-comic. She wasn't just a sidekick. Here, she was the main villain and worked actual magic, like she would sometimes turn people into werecats. Her appearance also differed slightly from the animated version, but the heart of the story about Adora's abduction, her connection with He-Man, and her rise as She-Ra weren't touched or altered in later iterations.
For the honor of Grayskull!
In She-Ra, Princess of Power, 1985. She-Ra, or Adora, was born a princess alright, but the tragedy was that her life didn't start with fairy tales or lullabies. Born to King Randor and Queen Marlena on the planet Eternia, she and her twin brother Adam should have grown up together in the royal palace. Hordak, the head of the evil Horde, decided to steal a little princess from her loving family. This crooked villain took Adora and ran straight to Etheria, where she was raised under the control of the Horde. So you can imagine the kind of upbringing she had and what kind of life she lived. You see, her whole identity was shaped by lies and blind obedience that was cultivated into her by force and fear. They trained her extremely hard and made her believe she was doing the right thing. She wore her red and white Force Captain uniform like a badge of honor. What she didn't know was that she was fighting for the bad guys. Meanwhile, back on Eternia, the sorceress figured out it was time to fix the issue and bring Adora into the fold of Eternia. She sent Adam and Cringer to Etheria with the Sword of Protection, which was meant for its rightful wielder. When Adora got her hands on it, the jewel in the sword basically lit up, and with it, her whole true backstory came to light for her to see. It told her everything, the kidnapping to her true lineage, her twin brother, and the fact that she had been fed a lie her whole life. And, weirdly enough, she wasn't entirely freaked out or shocked, so maybe on some level, she knew there was something off about her presence in the Horde, and she saw what the Horde was really about, and something inside her just snapped into place. Naturally, it wasn't long after that she turned on the Horde. First thing she did was break He-Man out of their grasp, then leapt straight out of a window and landed on her horse Spirit, who turned into an elegant but powerful flying unicorn named Swift Wind. The two of them then headed for the Rebellion. She did make a quick trip back to Eternia with Adam, but she didn't stay there for long because Etheria needed her more. I mean, Eternia had He-Man, but Etheria was without such a hero. Moreover, since Adora knew the Horde inside and out and how they fought, they thought, and where they were weak, she became the leader of the Great Rebellion. The rebellion soon became a full-scale war for the freedom of Etheria from the Horde. Villages, kingdoms, and even folks from other planets began to push back, and She-Ra rallied with all kinds of allies with weird powers, making friends with people who had strong grudges against Hordak and his minions. As the war spread across Etheria, her side kept growing stronger. She gave the people hope, and they started rising up, bit by bit. Now, while all this was going on, there was something a little more personal happening in the background. Captain Seahawk, the rebel pirate, seemed to have a soft spot for Adora, but we must emphasize that he didn't like She-Ra at all, just Adora. It wasn't all out in the open, but it was still pretty obvious to anyone who paid attention. In the expanded canon, they ended up getting married and having kids who fought alongside them across the stars. What's strange is that despite how huge this war was, neither the She-Ra nor the He-Man cartoon ever gave a final answer. We never got to see the Horde defeated for good, but the signs were there. For instance, more and more kingdoms were resisting, the rebellion was spreading, and the Horde's grip was slipping. The show left things pointed in the right direction, but never really reached a conclusion as such. Now, apart from her backstory, the 1985 show also told a great many things about She-Ra and He-Man. One of the biggest contrasts between Adora and Adam lies in how they handled their alter egos. Adam played the slacker prince role and pretended to be lazy so no one would suspect he was He-Man. Adora didn't do any of that. She was always bold and ready to help. Whether she was in uniform or not, she acted like She-Ra, and her personality never really needed to be kept hidden. When she transformed, the animation would flash two castles. First, Castle Grayskull, which was all about He-Man, and then the Crystal Castle, a secret sanctuary on Skydancer Mountain. That place was guarded by Light Hope, a mysterious energy being who acted like her spiritual guide. You can say that this energy was to She-Ra what the sorceress was to He-Man. In the toy line, the castle also had winged crystal horses named Moonbeam and Sundancer, but the show mostly stuck with Swift Wind. Only a tight circle knew where the Crystal Castle was. For instance, Ago the Troll King and her closest allies like Madame Raz, Cowl, and Swift Wind, as well as He-Man's friends, only those who knew about his double life. Also, Adora took the secrecy of the Crystal Castle pretty seriously. That's how she earned the title Defender of the Crystal Castle. Outside the main story, in the extended universe, She-Ra took flight with Seahawk aboard an upgraded solar sailor which could fly, sail, and even dive underwater. She also joined He-Man in his starship, fighting across space as part of his Galaxy Defenders. So yeah, she started off as a kidnapped baby, turned into a Horde soldier, and ended up as a warrior who traveled the cosmos defending planets. She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, 2018 to 2020. Adora's journey in the 2018 series started as a loyal teenage soldier who was completely committed to the Horde. Raised inside a strict military setup and trained by Shadow Weaver, Adora was always surrounded by war. Ever since she was a baby, she grew up thinking the princesses were the villains and Etheria needed saving from. Her best friend is Catra, with whom she grew up, and her role model is Shadow Weaver. As for her future, she was supposed to serve the Horde forever. Then she finds a glowing sword in the woods, which is when things change for her. When Glimmer and Bo capture her, she hears the other side for the first time and realizes that it was actually the Horde that was the problem. And once she realizes she's the one meant to wield the Sword of Protection and become She-Ra, there's no going back. Her entire belief system breaks apart into a gazillion pieces, so as the next logical step, she leaves the Horde, joins the rebellion, and starts from scratch. You see, she was an able warrior, but she had to learn how to fight for people instead of power. But this change in character and ideals had major fallout. Catra was left abandoned and angry and pretty much spiraled into the crazy. What used to be a sister-like bond had turned bitter because Adora became closer to her new allies and Catra started to explore her villainous side. The more Etheria suffered, the more Adora saw Catra as part of the problem. The interesting bit is that their story isn't a straight line. After years of tension and battle scars, they reconnect. Catra pulls herself out of the darkness and helps Adora defeat Horde Prime. Along the way, Adora discovers more stuff about her past. Turns out, she's not from Etheria at all. Instead, she was a descendant of the First Ones, a colonizer group that turned the planet into a giant magical battery, the heart of Etheria. Light Hope, who was supposed to be her guide, had an agenda too. She brought Adora here to set off the weapon. To stop it, Adora destroys the Sword of Protection. That saves Etheria, but it leaves the planet wide open for Horde Prime to attack. While trying to rescue Glimmer and Catra, she regains her powers and becomes She-Ra again. Later, when Etheria's magic could not return unless she sacrificed herself, she willingly obliged. She was ready to die to save everybody, but Catra refused to let that happen. She pulls Adora back, and they finally admit how they feel about each other. In terms of appearance, this She-Ra looks quite different from the original one. Adora is much younger in this version, and She-Ra stands nearly 8 feet tall. Her outfit is also practical, in the sense that she wears a tunic, leggings, and flat-soled boots. She is not like the other sword and sorcery princess who wore revealing clothes and short dresses. And we like this change. I mean, there's really no need to make women from these IPs wear skimpy clothes as long as it's not needed. In the Season 1 finale, she wears a golden battlesuit that has shades of He-Man's snake armor from the 2002 series. By Season 2, she unlocks a sword upgrade, so yeah, it could basically turn into different weapons and tools. The problem was, she couldn't always control it. After she destroys the sword in Season 4, she loses her transformation for a while. Halfway through Season 5, it comes back, but now it was only a projection, and some started calling this version She-Ra 2.0. Her hair was tied back, the diadem was also smaller. Oh, and how could we forget those white pants with the golden accents? Underneath all that stuff about power and destiny, Adora was just a tightly wound, mission-first kind of person. She was strong, sure, but it's the kind of strength that comes from discipline, not flash. She beats Seahawk in an arm wrestling match without trying, but socially she's awkward. She doesn't understand family words like aunt, and she tends to talk in orders. Her appetite's huge, and when she's eating, everything else fades away. She's a natural leader, but doesn't always realize it. When she leaves the Horde, she knows she might lose Catra forever, but she still does it, because she believes in doing what's right. She fumbles too. Her powers misfire, she struggles in war room meetings, sometimes she zones out or trips over her own sword. When she meets Swiftwind, they don't instantly sync, and when Lighthope starts comparing her to Mara, who was the last She-Ra who went rogue, something inside Adora changes. You see, she wants to be good, and even tries pretty hard to do so, but she's almost always scared of turning into a problem. She ends up idolizing Mara, especially after learning what she sacrificed. Needless to say, she also clearly has a type. She's into strong, tough women like Huntara and gets flustered around them. Thanks to years of control and manipulation, mostly from Shadow Weaver, Adora thinks everything's her fault. If something breaks, she has to fix it. If someone gets hurt, she should have stopped it. Since becoming She-Ra, she's developed a martyr complex. She throws herself into fights, cuts off help, and acts like her life isn't worth saving if others are in danger. In the episode called The Portal, she tries to fix the dimensional tear by pulling the sword out, but Angela stops her and takes her place. In The Heart Part 2, she tries to trigger the failsafe despite being too sick to survive it. Even when Catra begs her to stop, she pushes forward because dying feels like her job. Her need to protect sometimes veers into control. She thinks she knows what's best for others and makes choices for them, which often backfires. This aspect of her personality kinda reminds me of Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. Regardless, Catra and Glimmer call her out for it more than once. During a visit to Elberon, the town throws a party for her, and she laps it up. It feels good, but only for a second. Then things go wrong, and she realizes she let her ego take the wheel of her decisions. She's also stuck in a weird space with her identity in the sense that she doesn't really know what she likes or how she wants to look. She wears her Horde uniform long after switching sides, not because she's loyal, but because it's familiar. The original She-Ra design made her uncomfortable. The new one feels like her because it's less glamorous and more grounded. N.D. Stevenson, who created the show, described her as repressed. Duty's been her whole life, so anything she actually wants, like being with Catra, she suppresses. Forgiveness plays a huge role too. Adora gives people second chances even when it's hard. She stays suspicious of Shadow Weaver but still believes there's a sliver of good left. She forgives Glimmer fast after rescuing her from Horde Prime's ship. And with Catra, once she sees she's ready to change, she doesn't hold back. But with Horde Prime, there's no leeway. He refuses to change, so she ends him without hesitation. He-Man and She-Ra, The Secret of the Sword, 1985. The Secret of the Sword was released in theaters in 1985 as a full-length animated film in the He-Man universe, but it wasn't really original. Filmation took the first 5 episodes of She-Ra, Princess of Power, made a few tweaks, and stitched them together into a feature. This movie was part of a bigger wave in the 80s where studios turned TV cartoons and toy lines into theatrical releases, cash in on both. It shares the same universe, cast, and crew as He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, things tied in across both shows. It also gave audiences their first look at She-Ra, marking her official debut on big screens. Film ran in theaters 6 months before the She-Ra show aired, and in September 1985, it got chopped back into episodes and broadcast across the first week of the She-Ra series. In the TV format, it's known as The Sword of She-Ra, with the same plot and action broken into different parts. Either way, it sets up Adora's origin, connection with Adam, her switch from Force Captain to Rebel Hero.
I am She-Ra!
He-Man and She-Ra, a Christmas special, 1985 made-for-television Christmas movie. The He-Man and She-Ra Christmas special starts with Prince Adam helping Man-at-Arms finish a spaceship called the Sky Spy, basically a floating telescope to spy on Skeletor. Before they can get it secured, Orko slips into the cockpit and fiddles with things he probably shouldn't. Next thing you know, the ship launches itself into space with Orko in the pilot's seat. Skeletor, spotting it mid-air, decides to chase it down even though he has no clue who's flying it. He-Man and She-Ra show up, punch a hole in Skeletor's collector ship, and knock him off course without realizing Orko's inside the runaway shuttle. Orko tries to land the thing using a spell and ends up zapping himself straight off Eternia and onto Earth. The Sky Spy faceplants into the woods. While on Earth, Orko runs into two kids, Miguel and Alicia, who get lost trying to find a Christmas tree. He takes them into the wrecked Sky Spy and they explain what Christmas is, which is all new to him. Back on Eternia, everyone finally figures out Orko's missing when they find his spellbook lying near the launch site. Man-at-Arms locates the Sky Spy's coordinates and realizes it landed on Earth. Trouble is, the transporter needs a rare Carium water crystal to beam Orko back, and they don't have one. Adora suggests they might find one on Etheria, transforms into She-Ra, and heads off on swift wind to fetch it. On Etheria, She-Ra meets up with Mermista and tracks down the crystal, which unfortunately happens to be guarded by something called the Beast Monster. After taking care of that mess, she gets ambushed by a bunch of monstroids, massive android brutes who take the crystal and haul it off. Luckily, She-Ra escapes and brings back the crystal anyways. Once she returns, Man-at-Arms fires up the transporter and beams Orko back, but he's not alone. Miguel, Alicia, and their Christmas tree come with. The kids are sad to miss Christmas, so Queen Marlena decides to combine Adam and Adora's birthday bash proper Christmas party. Meanwhile, things get weird on the villain side. Lord Prime freaks out when he senses Christmas spirit leaking into Eternia. Apparently, that's the one thing that could mess with his plans for galactic domination, so he sends Skeletor and Hordak to capture the kids, dangling a reward in front of them. Naturally, both go full petty mode, competing for brownie points. Hordak gets to the kids first with a tractor beam and grabs Orko too. Before he can get away, the monstroids shoot his ship down and kidnap the kids for themselves. They want to use them as bargaining chips with Horde Prime. Before things go full disaster, the Manchines, tiny toy-like robots, rescue the kids and Orko. The monstroids try to shut it down, but He-Man and She-Ra arrive after getting a tip from Peekaboo. Together with the Manchines, they push back the monstroid goons. That's when Skeletor steps in and steals the kids and Relay, a Manchine puppy. Hordak catches up and shoots down Skeletor's flying scooter, forcing him to hike through a snow-covered mountain with two shivering kids and a dog. This is where things go haywire for the skeletal sorcerer. Skeletor, who's supposed to be all evil all the time, finds himself warming up, literally and figuratively. He gives the kids jackets, brings the dog along so it doesn't freeze, even protects them from a snow beast. He asks about Christmas and keeps insisting he's still bad, like he's trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Right before Horde Prime arrives, He-Man, She-Ra, and Orko finally catch up, but Hordak also swoops in, knocks out Skeletor, and sends in her troops to stall the heroes. While all this chaos unfolds, Relay the puppy wakes Skeletor, who regains consciousness, blasts Horde Prime's ship out of the sky before he can harm the kids. He-Man and She-Ra grab the ship and yeet it into space. Miguel and Alicia thank Skeletor, who looks relieved to learn Christmas is only once a year. Back in the palace, Adam dresses as Santa and gives the kids flying belts. Then Man-at-Arms sends them back to Earth using the transporter, and their parents welcome them home. And to wrap things up, Adam delivers the moral. Christmas is about caring, sharing, and good vibes. Orko agrees, but adds that he really likes the presents, naturally. Other appearances of She-Ra. She-Ra's live-action film career almost began in Masters of the Universe, the 1987 film, but the studio changed its mind soon enough, and She-Ra was axed from the movie. She was very much there in the original plan. There was even concept art by William Stout to back that up, but director Gary Goddard chose to keep the focus on He-Man, as he thought it would be better to save She-Ra for the sequel, keep the attention only on He-Man for the first Masters of the Universe live-action movie. Except, of course, that sequel never actually happened. The project collapsed and eventually got reworked into a completely unrelated sci-fi film called Cyborg. So yeah, studios do these sort of things all the time. Cyborg stars Jean-Claude Van Damme as Gibson Rickenbacker, a martial artist who must help a cyborg named Pearl Prophet deliver the cure for a crippling plague to the right people. Humanity goes extinct forever. Anyways, they did sneak in a She-Ra-like character named Nadie Simmons, who was played by Deborah Richter, but I don't need to tell you that it just wasn't the same thing. So, She-Ra's big screen debut got shelved before it even left the storyboard. That said, she didn't completely vanish. In 2007, Robot Chicken gave her a place, of course in their usual offbeat fashion. She appears in a skit where a bunch of male characters keep pestering her for help. She's clearly annoyed, not because of the bad guys, but because she's on her period and wants to be left alone. Fed up, she transforms into She-Ra and wipes the floor with everyone, swearing she's doing it so she can finally get some sleep. It's a crude joke, but it fits the MO of Robot Chicken, which is poking fun at pop culture without sugarcoating anything. Next, in 2008, She-Ra got a more serious treatment in the Masters of the Universe Classics toy line by Mattel. The new toys came with mini-comics and lore-packed bios that merged old cartoons, comics, and fresh story beats into one timeline. In this version, Hordak ends up trapped in the Despondos dimension by King Grayskull. Skeletor was still his apprentice at the time, decides he wants to kidnap Adora and send her to Etheria, what usually happens in She-Ra stories, just that the kidnapper is almost always Hordak. Also in this version, Hordak overthrows King Randor, and Adora joins hands with He-Man and her Etherian friends to fight back. Together, the siblings take the battle to space and head to the planet Primus to front Horde Prime himself. Eventually, She-Ra falls under Horde Prime's control and returns in a darker persona as Despara. This adds a villain arc to her history and one that sticks across future media. That darker side of Adora was also depicted at some length in DC's take on the franchise. In 2012, DC Comics brought her into their continuity with a sharper, heavier reboot of her origin. Instead of the soft-hearted, brainwashed soldier from the cartoon, Adora, now known as Despara, is a ruthless enforcer for the Horde. She knows exactly what they stand for and doesn't shy away from it. She helps lead an attack on Eternia and forces He-Man and the Masters into hiding. It's through a strange connection to Teela that Adora starts to question her loyalty. That internal tug-of-war is what sets her on the road to redemption. Also, her transformation into She-Ra, as one can expect, is were never a bed of roses for her in this version. In fact, this version of her backstory leans way harder into tragedy, violence, and guilt. Often paints her as someone deeply conflicted and hard to redeem. In the middle of all this lore-heavy reinvention, She-Ra also appears in lighter corners of the franchise. He was a playable character in He-Man, the most powerful game in the universe, released in 2012 for handheld devices. It wasn't deep or groundbreaking, but it kept her in circulation. Then came Masters of the Universe Revolution in 2024, and the She-Ra updates kept coming. In the third episode, she appears briefly in a flashback as a baby during her kidnapping by Hordak. Fifth episode's epilogue, she shows up again, but not as the classic She-Ra. This time, she's Despera. Grey DeLisle voices her in that darker role. She doesn't have a major arc in Revolution. Her presence is meant to stir anticipation, especially for what's teased in the comic tie-in. In Masters of the Universe Revolution number 4, Despara appears again at the end. One variant cover asks, "Who is Despara?" which hints that they're not done with her yet. Meanwhile, Amazon is working on a live-action She-Ra series. They first announced it in 2021 with DreamWorks Animation on board as executive producer. But unlike the 2018 animated reboot, this new series won't connect to the previous version. It's a standalone story. In October 2024, writer Heidi Schreck signed on to develop it. Amazon MGM Studios is behind both the live-action show and the Masters of the Universe film, scheduled for 2026, but as of now, it's confirmed whether the two will link up or stay separate. So, She-Ra's been pulled in a dozen directions since her debut. Each one has carved out a new version of who she is. Whether she's a symbol of hope, fierce rebel, or a fallen soldier clawing her way back, keeps on evolving without losing that core identity. Even when she doesn't get the spotlight, her presence lingers, quiet, powerful, and waiting to be unleashed again. That's She-Ra. And that's all the information we have for you guys. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Stay safe out there to have a marvelous day.